You could hear somebody's voice. Do you ever hear somebody's voice and then you see them in person? You're like, whoa, that is
Oh
like not
yeah.
even in a bad way, but it's just like that's
Like
not
it's just
what
not
I
like what
thought
you
you looked
fill
like.
in your brain. Like
Right.
there was this radio show my mom and I used to listen to every morning, like when she'd drive me to school and whatnot. And when I saw them like on the website, like for something, I don't know, it was years later. I was like, what in the world? Like I had no idea. Like completely different hair color, different ethnicities.
Yeah,
Like I
exactly.
literally had no idea that what these people
Yeah.
looked like in my brain, my like little girl brain. I just made them look so different and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
It
No.
like made me just question everything.
All right, well, welcome everybody. This is When God Writes a Love Story with Joshua and Rayanne. I'm Joshua,
I'm Rayanne.
and welcome. This is going to be a honest, raw testimony and just a storytelling series here. We don't know how many episodes it's going to take. Could take a few because our story is long, and we want to be as open with all the details as possible. So hopefully it's interesting to you. Hopefully it impacts you in a positive way. We just wanted to start right there at the very beginning. Do you have anything you wanted to say before we get started?
Um, no, I don't
Okay,
think so. I think
great.
we can just get into it.
Yeah, so we're going to start all the way back in 2020. That's where this story begins. Everybody's favorite year, of course.
It's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything too significant happened that year, but uh maybe you disagree. No, I'm joking, of course. But okay, so before any of that, my year in 2020 started off in Houston, actually. Um, I had made my way out there. I was living with a friend. Shout out Josh, living in his living room. He was kind enough to kind of let me stay there while I was looking to get my feet. But I was having a lot of trouble. I was having trouble finding a home, an apartment, a place of my own, having trouble finding a job, which was really surprising to me.
Stressful.
Yeah, but I've never had anywhere I've been, I've never had a problem finding a job. Like it's usually been pretty quick interview processes. I interviewed at a couple places or applied to a few different places and they just either wouldn't call me back or they'd be like, "No, we're going to go with someone else." Um
Yeah.
so
I think, sorry to cut you off, but I think it's a little different in big cities because when I was living in Atlanta, I was getting very discouraged like the first month I was there because that was the longest it ever took for me to get a job. And I applied at so many different places. So I think it might just be a big city thing. Like there's significantly more people.
more candidates. It makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
perhaps I'm not as qualified as I thought I was for some of those jobs. But even like fast
Right.
food and stuff, I mean,
Sorry, I
come
bumped
on.
the mic.
It's different now, obviously. Everybody's hiring, everywhere is hiring, so um but yeah.
Yeah, if you need a job, just like walk
Yeah,
outside.
go ahead, drive down the street. You'll probably see at least 4 "we're hiring" signs, and they get more and more desperate. "We're hiring, please." Yeah, so uh so that's where I was. And just to kind of paint the full picture, not only was I panicking, but I was also trying to relieve that stress by using alcohol, abusing alcohol, really, um, doing drugs. I was smoking a lot of weed, and I was just generally in a very low point in my life and unsure of where I was going to go next. Um, you know, so thankfully, um, kind of in that last week where it was like, okay, I really got to get out of, my friend's house. That was just like, there was really no space for me there. Stressful, you know?
Yeah.
And he didn't have to hold me up anyway. He was just doing that, um, because he's a kind man. Um, but he had a girlfriend, and I was intruding on their space. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a good situation. You know, you wouldn't want that, right?
I mean, at that time in my life, there were a lot of people that lived in my house that didn't live there. And if any of my old roommates are watching this, like, y'all know how we used to roll in that house and the house before that. Like, there was always someone in someone's room, on the couch, on the floor. It's just like a different season of life now. So, no, currently, I would not really want anyone in our living room
Right.
unless it was like really, really necessary. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't like prefer that.
Right.
No.
So, um, I kind of desperately, well, I did a bunch of desperate things, honestly, which I won't get all the way into here. Maybe for another time, another video. Watch our podcast, and maybe we'll get into some of those stories. But for now, I'll just say I called my sister because I couldn't go back to my parents' house, which was in Virginia. I'd kind of burned that bridge.
Everything's
And
okay now.
yes, oh, everything's great now. I could live there right now if I wanted to, but I don't. um,
We're in a different state.
different state, which is perfectly fine, and we'll get there. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah. So I called my sister Nicole, and she graciously allowed me to come to Georgia. So I took a bus from Houston to Georgia and ended up there in kind of mid to late January. She and her boyfriend welcomed me right in, and he got me a job at Wild Wing Cafe there in Statesboro, Georgia. Um, Shout out to all those people there. If any of you guys are watching this, um, those who I miss, you know who you are. So that's where I was.
What about everyone else?
Well, everyone else I don't miss. So, and maybe they know who they are too. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. It was really a great place for me. I made a lot of friends really quickly, and I really enjoyed being there. Not the work, being a cook in a kitchen. It's,
It's hot in there.
it's not very fun.
Stressful, fast
Yes.
paced,
Right.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah. But it only a couple months later, and the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
March 2020. I don't know when exactly we shut down, probably like the 14th or something. And yeah, everything kind of turned upside down at that point. So
Yeah.
that's where I was. I'll let you kind of tell your story up to that point.
Up till like March
Yeah,
2020.
like pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Okay, so pre-pandemic. Let's see. The start of 2020, I was really trying to understand how to be with the Lord in my situation because my situation wasn't ideal. I wasn't in an environment that could really nurture that relationship. My friends either didn't believe in God or just didn't really care to have that conversation, or would blatantly like get angry about that conversation. There was a couple people in there, and they also would know who they are if they're watching this, where we did talk about the Lord, but our lifestyle was just not very spirit led. It was very of the flesh, We were partying a lot and all the things that come with that, like the drinking and the drugs, being up late, working hard, partying hard, like not taking care of ourselves, like all very much in a just not the best like mental health state. Um yeah, and let's see. Yeah, I was also working at a restaurant. I had just stopped like dancing in a hip hop crew. I was still teaching dance though, and then that studio closed. The restaurants closed. I left the other one because everyone else at my house was staying home, and I just felt, because we didn't know what was going on, so I didn't know if it was safe for me to like be out like in a busy restaurant like interacting with all these people when no one knew like what was happening with COVID. So I left and basically just rode out the rest of my lease until like May. And in that time, like being isolated was hard, even with my friends, because I wasn't trying to smoke anymore. The last time I smoked was February of 2020. So like right before
Right.
that, I stopped. I was trying to get together this like gallery thing, like the series for this photo gallery I was going to do, and that got canceled. So like I was really like trying to like figure out like how to use my gifts for the Lord, because that series was about the Lord. Trying to figure out like how to separate myself from the people I loved, and like be in his word and do all of that. So during
Right.
that time I was pretty much just like in my room with my Bible.
Because you
Um
had already moved into your grandparents' house at that
well,
point, right?
my well, if we're talking January to March, I was in the house with my friends. Lease was up in May, moved in with Nana and Pop at the end of June.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
yeah. And that was kind of like the beginning of like a true wilderness season that was really special during COVID, because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. The Lord had me sit down at his feet, and that's kind of where I was right before I met you,
Yeah. I
going later into 2020 now.
I think that probably is a very similar experience for a lot of people during the pandemic. Is obviously a lonely season.
Yes,
So
very lonely.
you know, we were forced to be separated from everybody that we knew or would usually hang out with. Um, and everybody was scared. You weren't able to go to church, you weren't able to go to work, you weren't able to go to do whatever you would normally do. Even just go over to your friend's house to have a chat or go sit at a coffee shop. So I think
Right.
for a lot of people, yeah, the pandemic forced them to really slow down.
Mm.
Now, for me, being in Georgia during the pandemic, um, things still shut down, but there were a lot of places that were actually still relatively open. Like you could
Yeah.
go in there with a mask on. Um, Wild Wing, the restaurant I worked at in particular, was shut down, but they were still doing to go.
Yeah.
So
Most restaurants were just like doing all to go just to stay
right,
afloat. A lot of small businesses were just
they
doing
had to
what they
do
could.
something. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, the managers and other salaried employees would go in and you know run to go, but I wasn't one of those, obviously. So I didn't have a job. Uh, Thankfully, there was unemployment. That was that was good. That was clutch for me. State of Georgia.
Can't relate.
Yeah,
I tried.
they
It
just
just, it was really hard to get in contact with anybody
mm,
and to get like even just my paperwork through. So
yeah.
didn't get that.
I did it all online, and thankfully that they were pretty quick with it. I actually might have gotten it from Virginia. Now that I'm thinking about it, because that was like where I had worked the longest for like the last month or year beforehand.
Okay.
So
Okay.
anyway, regardless of all that, but it was different down there because uh, not a lot of people were really scared of the pandemic. Most people were just like, I don't know, literally like, oh, this is fake, or it's a hoax, or this is just a way to, you know, hit the economy, and
So different than
all
up here.
all other sorts of conspiracy theories, um, as to what was happening and why. And so also I was hanging out with a couple of friends of mine which is important to this story. They were my best friends that I made in Georgia right away.
Yeah.
And I think that I was with them the night that we kind of heard everything was going to shut down, because we weren't really sure at first. Like, we knew that coronavirus was a thing,
Then it was other places.
but it was
Didn't
like
know if
kind
it
of
made its way over
trickling
here.
its way down, the actual shutdowns, state by state. So, the night that we actually heard that was happening, I'm pretty sure we were with each other, probably smoking or something. And so we were like, well, I guess we can quarantine together, like we can still hang out.
That was your quarantine.
Yeah, exactly.
My parents had a quarantine where it was like 3 families. They didn't see anybody else but each other, and they were all fine during that time.
Yeah, exactly. So as long as everybody
you're smart about
stays in their little bubble, I have obviously had my sister, her boyfriend, because we were living together, and then those 2 friends were like the only people. But yeah, so on one of those, pandemic days, nothing to do, I was over there doing what I normally would do, right?
Things he wasn't supposed to be
doing. I should not be doing, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was this just a moment where my friend was like, "Hey, I downloaded this app. Like, let's go on there and see what it's all about." And so we were like, "Oh, okay, let's do it." And it was an app called Tin Can, a live podcasting app.
His favorite app in the world.
Yeah, of course. I have a super soft spot for Tin Can. And I'll try to explain why. One of the coolest things about Tin Can. Well, first let me back up. First, we went live on there. We did a live podcast, and people were actually joining. And I was like, "Oh, what is this all about?" And we were kind of talking some stuff, and just generally being, silly. And I think
goofy.
They got kind of freaked out. My friends did, with like the fact that people were joining and actually listening and like being in the chat and stuff, and they just couldn't handle it. They were like, let's do something else.
They're like, we just wanted to hang out together. We didn't want these other people
Right.
listening to our conversations.
But I was like, this is interesting. I was writing a lot of poetry at the time. I was like, I can share my poetry on here. Like, this looks like a cool app. So I went home and I downloaded it for myself, and I started going on there every day. And that was in late March. And I named myself Wordy, WORDE, E-bar.
E-bar.
Whatever that is. The E with the bar on the top.
The long E sound.
So go follow me on Tin Can. First, go make a Tin Can, because it's a tiny app. There was, when I first joined, and even still, there's like so few active users. Like, you're lucky to see more than 10 people at one time. But that's what made it so amazing, is because we were all there. Height of the pandemic, it was happening all around the world. So there was people in Canada, people in Europe. They had a different server for Japanese and Korean. But just like, okay, all these people coming together under one roof and forming a little community, like a little neighborhood. You would see people that
quarantine.
Yeah, you would see people that you knew, and you'd be like, "Oh my goodness, hey, they're in the live. Let me go join." And you'd be in the chat, because back then it was only one person could speak. One person's like hosting a podcast, couldn't have any guests or anything like that. That's all changed now. But everybody else is in the chat, kind of like a Twitch chat,
minus the video.
Minus the video, yes. And then we'd be on there hanging out with somebody cool, and then they would end their live, and then I would make a live, and I'd be hanging out and just being a hoodlum. This was not a great time in my life. Still, I was very much in a low place, but I was starting to find community
Mm.
online, which I had never really experienced before, and gain a little bit of traction too. Like people actually liked me, and
He
it
was
was
finding his voice.
yes, that's it. Really did help me to come out of my shell that way, because before then I would have never imagined that I'd even be doing something like this. I kind of wanted to, but I didn't feel confident enough
It was
to.
skirt.
They're scared. Yeah. So, but I was doing comedy and poetry. Number one comedy channel on Tin Can, self-proclaimed, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And yeah,
Probably.
probably.
You're
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there was so many cool people on there. I legitimately made so many friends, and I still go on Tin Can too. I'm still around on there.
Yeah.
Occasionally, a little bit more lately. I've taken long hiatuses. Um, but yeah, that was kind of how I found Tin Can. So how did that happen for you?
Well, I okay, so at this point I moved into Nana's and Papa's house, left that house with my friends. We all kind of like went our separate ways, went home. Cuz we didn't have jobs. So we had to leave and we couldn't re-sign our lease. Sad. And just a note on that, like when I was 18, I moved out of state and like really just wanted to be independent and on my own. So this was a time in my life where I feel like I was being forced to like ask for help again. And I had already done it a couple years before that when I moved back from Atlanta. So I was just like feeling frustrated. Dance studios were closed. I left the restaurants. I was living in my grandparents' basement, which I love living with them. It was great. They were
Yeah.
like the best roommates ever, besides you.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, he's not my roommate. He's my husband. But, like they were great. I loved being around them. But it's just different. Like when you've been independent and then you get forced into this like childlike place again when necessarily
Kind of
like
feel
you
like you
wouldn't have
failed a little bit.
necessarily like chosen that for yourself, right? So I was just all over the place, but like really just like, Lord, what is going on? What should I do? Like I know everyone is stopping life right now, but I still want to figure it out. That's kind of where I've been with the Lord a lot. So that's where I was spiritually, mentally, and physically. Um I found Tin Can one afternoon. I was just like laying on the living room floor. They have really comfortable carpet, really bored, and saw an ad for it on Instagram. It was this little animation of a girl like laying on her bed on her phone with her feet like kicked up behind her, kind of like all happy on her phone. And then there was a string connected from her phone to another guy's phone, like a tin can phone. And he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was like playing guitar. And I was like, "This seems chill. Like, what is it? Like a chat thing, a music streaming thing?" Like, always been super into music. So I was like, "Okay, let me go on there." Opened it up and no one was live because it was the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, that was a dead time.
Yeah, and sometimes people were on at that time, but this day in particular, at that moment, no one was, and I just like did not know what was going on. I was like, "What is this?" But I was searching hashtags and stuff because I think at that time they like prompted you to like enter some interests or something, so they
Oh,
could like
yeah.
suggest people. So I put writing, poetry, music, and then you popped up because you had all your poetry on there.
Yeah.
So I followed him.
Use the hashtags, guys.
First
Pays
person
off.
first person I followed. I stalked your whole page. I listened to all of your poems and looked at all of your little selfies with your cats and pictures of the sky and all this stuff that I really liked that poem that you wrote about that red sunset.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Thanks.
We'll have to
That was a good
feature
one.
that sometime. That was dope. So that was my first impression of you and my first impression of Tin Can. But since no one was on there, I just got off and was like, maybe I'll come on later and like record some of my poetry because I also like writing and poetry because of my dad. You know, I've liked it since I was like in 3rd grade. I always wanted to write like my dad. So that's just a little fun fact I wanted to include because, you know, helps paint the picture of
Yeah.
me
That's
and where I
nice.
started with writing. So yeah, that was really how I got on there. And then later that week, like maybe a day later, couldn't have been more than a day because you were on
Probably
there
not. I
like
was on
every
there every
day.
day.
It
So
was either
yeah,
like that night or the next night
I'm sure it was that night.
that I got a notification that said Wordy is going live, like say hey or whatever the notification is. Um, so I did, and I entered the chat.
Mhm.
Rayanne Rose. I had no pictures of myself, no recordings. I was a new tin can baby. Had a little like silhouette profile picture to be all mysterious because this was a place where I didn't have to like worry about like selfies and whatever.
Right.
So I just was like trying to be mysterious. So
Yeah.
I mysteriously entered your chat.
You did. And of course, that wasn't really anything new. Summer of 2020, this was like late June.
Yeah,
Um, that was like the heyday of Tin Can. New
it was great.
users were joining all the time. There was plenty of new people, but also plenty of OGs, you know. Uh, plenty of people that had been around, you know, since March or a little before, you know. That was really, I think, when the pandemic started is when they really started their ad campaign. I never saw those ads, but um, thankfully I found the app anyway. So yeah, you joined. I don't know what I was talking about,
I don't
or
know. It was late at night.
yeah,
I was just on the floor again. I'm a floor sitter. I remember this. I was sitting on the floor in front of the mirror. I had just like been dancing around. I was like getting bored and went on there and you were just being silly and I
yeah.
think Anime Girl was in there
Oh
and you
yeah,
guys were talking and
animation girl.
Animation Girl
Yeah,
and I can't remember who else was in there, but I know for sure she was in there.
I almost forgot about her. That is yeah,
So yeah,
throwback.
I remember that.
Yeah. Who knows what we talked about? It's just there was no distinction between anyone in my lives that I can really remember.
You'd be like, "Hey, welcome to the #1
Yeah,
comedy channel on Tin
yeah,
Can."
exactly. Just gassing myself up, and trying to be funny, and hopefully succeeding. I don't know, maybe sometimes succeeding. So yeah, but what we must have connected enough because after I ended my live, I know that you went live, and then I
Yes.
joined yours. And I think it was in that one that I was chatting with you. There was other people that I knew, other people I didn't know.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of like introducing me to the app. Like
yeah,
you encouraged me to go live cuz I was just going to like get off because I was like, "Okay,
yeah. I
I'm done
inspired you.
now."
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
inspired you
I did.
inspired me to hop on the mic,
Yeah, which I'm
which he's
glad you did.
currently doing as well because I would never have been caught dead in front of this camera. Period.
You're welcome, everybody. So yeah, that was um I take full credit for helping to bring you out of your shell as well. No.
Good job. Thank you, babe.
Yeah, so you went live. Yeah, I probably was showing you around being the Tin Can ambassador that I am and just introducing you to all the people and all the things. And if I kind of met somebody and I thought that they were cool on Tin Can, the main thing that we would do is we would exchange Instagrams.
Yeah.
And for most people, it was like, you know, they give you your Instagram, you follow them, they follow you back, you look at each other's pictures, and that's it, for the most part. So, you know, I got a lot of Instagram followers from Tin Can, actually.
Nice.
I don't even know. I can't, like, distinguish when I look back anymore. It's like, is this person from Tin Can or did I used to know you? Um,
It's probably harder to distinguish because you knew the people on Tin Can, so you're not like
as their Tin Can name.
recognizing, right. You're not recognizing their name or their username or their face
Right.
when they pop up on Instagram. It's like, who is that?
Right.
I didn't follow that many people on there.
Some people had their same name on both though, which was helpful,
I did that.
including me. I actually changed my Instagram name to wordy_Joshua for that very reason, so that people
Okay.
would know who I was. But yeah, later on that same night, I believe I got an Instagram DM.
Yeah, so after I slid into the chat, I then slid into the DMs with
Mhm.
some heart emoji.
Yes, you said, "Hey, love."
Hey, trying to be so
And
quirky and cute.
me, a lonely guy at that point in time, was just very much like, you know, like, what's this all about? But I played it cool. Oh, I wanted to back up though, because this is always a fun part to tell. So, of course, when you're on Tin Can, you had seen my pictures, but I hadn't seen yours.
Right, I was
You
mysterious.
were mysterious,
Yeah.
yes, very. So I'd only heard your voice, and I was like, okay,
And he fell in love.
she sounds cute. You know what I mean? But you never know, because voices can be very deceiving. You know what I mean? You can hear somebody's voice. Do you ever hear somebody's voice and then you see them in person? You're like, whoa, that is
Oh,
like not
yeah.
even in a bad way, but it's just like that's
Like,
not
it's just
what
not
I
like what
thought
you
looked
fill
like.
in your brain. Like,
Right.
there was this radio show my mom and I used to listen to every morning, like when she'd drive me to school and whatnot. And when I saw them, like, on the website, like, for something, I don't know, it was years later. I was like, what in the world? Like, I had no idea. Like, completely different hair color, different ethnicities.
Yeah,
Like, I
exactly.
literally had no idea that what these people
Yeah.
looked like. In my brain, my like little girl brain, I just made them look so different, and it freaked me out.
Yeah, no,
It like made me just question everything
yeah.
for a second.
It just goes to show that you really cannot tell anything just based off of voice inflection
Right.
alone.
That might happen to people if they're like not watching this on YouTube and
Yeah.
they're listening to it.
You know
you know?
what? That would be a good like Jubilee video. Is like try to
Oh, that
like
would be
guess the
super
person
interesting.
by their voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you hear a little clip of their voice and then they're in a lineup and you have to like try to guess who it is.
That would be very interesting.
Free idea.
Yeah.
Except you have to give me credit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't know what you looked like. I was hoping that you were cute. But so then I scrolled down your Instagram after you followed me or allowed me to follow you. I think you were private.
I wasn't.
You weren't?
No.
Okay, well, whatever.
I've never had a private Instagram.
Neither
except for
have
when I had a Finsta.
I'm open book, okay? But yeah, so I scrolled down and you had a lot of like artsy photos.
Oh yeah.
So
I was like at the peak of my like really trying to be artsy on Instagram.
took me a couple scrolls to actually get to your face.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of pictures of myself. I
Um
had pictures of so many other people, so you're probably like, which one is it? Like, I had
Yeah,
a bunch
right.
of other girls on there. Now that I'm remembering, like, my friends like would model for me. I would post cool, like, weird angled shots
like
and
little
whatnot.
silhouettes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I did find
Finally
your
found my face.
and I was like, oh, she is cute. Oh, so of course you never expect that it's gonna get this far. At that point it was basically just me having a little like, I mean, I was in my 20s, but I had a little teenager brain, just like, oh, cute girl, talk to me. Wow, so nice, But yeah, so you messaged me on Instagram, and then we started talking
Nonstop.
every
Literally constantly.
day.
All the time.
Mm-hmm. Connecting over poetry, connecting over God.
Jesus.
We did talk a lot about God. Now, for kind of reference, and maybe you are able to tell based on how I've told my side of the story up until now, but I was not really actively chasing after God at this point. I was kind of running a little bit.
And I was becoming more and more obsessed with him.
Yeah.
I'm so in love. But I was like, it was like the peak of
was fresh.
me falling for him. Yes, it was still fresh, only within that last like year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like my first time in like separated from everything that was like really separating me from him. So I was talking about Jesus all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I had grown up in the church, and I had gone through a period where I kind of went off on my own. I wasn't going to church. I wouldn't have called myself a Christian. I was kind of looking into the new age. Um,
I've been there
and
too.
thank God that he pulled me away from that. And so I'd already had that experience of kind of like being resaved, I guess you could say. Like I definitely don't think that I was not claiming God at all for a time. And then I was again, but kind of my relationship with God had gone through a bunch of ebbs and flows in the couple of years since
Yeah.
that point. So, because I was still drinking, I was still smoking, I didn't want to give those things up, and I was just, you know, very much, you know, just really bad cursing, like just not that those things are what makes you a Christian or not a Christian, but what it was the fruit that went to show that I really wasn't trying to live for God or be a representative for him. But that didn't mean that if I got into a conversation about God, like I still knew all the
He
facts.
came correct.
I knew the Bible, still do, obviously, even more so now, but like, could quote chapter and verse, knew a lot of things, had a lot of interesting ideas, um, you know,
Yeah.
kind of trying to blend the new age
Yeah.
and
There were a couple of
Christianity
things you
still
said
at
where I was
that
like,
point.
well, I don't necessarily think that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
Just trying to be nice.
I was still
Like, I don't know about that though.
still on the fence on some of those things. Not great, but yeah, we were able to connect over that, and of course, in my heart of hearts, I knew that if I was gonna be with somebody long term, like to marry, they needed to be a Christian, and I had kind of strayed away from that in the past with other girlfriends that I had had,
Yeah.
and it just never worked out, and I came to the conclusion that it was because we didn't have the same faith. And so the fact that we were able to connect over that and over poetry and just a bunch of other things that we talked about everything.
Everything.
It was great because it really felt like we were getting super deep super quickly. And that's what I like. I hate small talk. I really don't like to, I don't like surface level stuff. I want to really get down to the roots of who you are. And so we were on FaceTime. We were obviously DMing. We did some Zoom calls, some poetry workshops and stuff.
Yeah, we were like writing together, started coming up with okay, so here's the next like part in that. We were doing these poetry workshops together, writing together and editing each other's pieces, and then like we started getting this idea for like a whole project. And I always forget about that. I want to do you have that still? I don't know if I have that. I might have deleted it, sadly.
I don't know. I don't
But
think so.
we were just like, okay, let's hit the ground running and like do stuff together. Like it just
Yeah.
like immediately like made sense to like work together on stuff. And this was one of the first times that I'd really seen like a clear vision of any type of partnership with a person in general, but especially like a man, because I had only had like two main relationships and they both were not healthy for me or the other person. And they just like when you're a person that loves hard, which I am that person, it's easy to be like, yeah, like I'm gonna marry this person, like we're gonna do this and do that. But you know that you're conjuring it up in your mind. This was different. This was like I saw a vision of us working together and speaking together and
Like
touching
traveling.
people together all over the place, like traveling. I saw this vision of us like sitting in the desert under the stars outside of a camper van, on like a poetry tour or something, like, because that was like my concept of like what I was gonna do, because I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was still at this time in my life, like at this point where I'm like, God, what's going on? What do I do? So anything I was doing, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. So that's like this vision I saw, and actually that actually came to pass on our honeymoon. We were in the desert under the stars, sitting outside a camper van, talking about the Lord.
We weren't really writing or anything.
We weren't writing or anything,
No.
but like I saw that and it actually happened, which was like really weird. Maybe like I just like saw it and was like, let's do it. Let's go to the desert to Utah for our honeymoon.
Yeah.
But all that to say is that like I could see myself partnering with you. Obviously, like right now, like we're not partnering in that. We haven't really written a lot recently. But I saw myself as a partner to you, as us being so closely knit that we would work together and accomplish things as a team, even though like we weren't dating. Like this is like how I was feeling about you just based off of how we connected as friends. Like you just like very quickly became my best friend, and I just think that's a significant piece, like that I could see purpose with you. Obviously, our
Yeah.
purpose looks different now that we have a greater understanding and have
Yeah.
gone through all these different things that we'll talk about. But that's like a big thing I wanted to note, because
Yeah.
it's crazy to me when I look back at that. We barely even brushed the surface of like what has happened.
There was an instant like, let's do these things together. Since we've met each other, you like to, I like to, like, let's make a plan, let's do it. I haven't written in a while. When I read my old poetry, it's kind of clear why I haven't. Like that was really just a season in my life, and when I read it, like you can tell I'm confused, I'm lonely, I'm full of anxiety, borderline depressed, and some of them are just like generally dark,
Yeah. You were processing those emotions at that time of your life.
Yeah.
Poetry is such a beautiful way to process.
And now that I really have a much more stable relationship with God first and with you, less of that is really like, I'm less inspired to really write poetry.
Right.
Like when I've sat down and tried, it just kind of feels forced, and
Yeah.
not as
I
don't know.
think like just something on that, like for anyone, if you're like a creative watching, especially like coming through like that season of like transformation with the Lord, like I used to create out of my pain all the time, and like people in the world do all the time, and that's okay. Like it's a good way to express yourself, but there might be a season of quiet because the Lord wants you to go through that healing from that pain with him, and then maybe after that you'll reflect and he'll give you the words and he'll give you the vision. So if you're meant to write poetry, if I'm meant to write poetry now that we're not in those places, maybe we'll just totally flip it around and write in a totally new way. So I think it's okay that you're not writing in that way anymore, because we have those hard conversations and process it together, and in prayer, and with spiritual mothers and fathers, and our actual mothers and fathers, and all that. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think
No, that's all I had to say. I don't know why I was gonna start talking again.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I was gonna say that one thing, if you're a creative too, is you're gonna go through similar types of seasons, and probably already have. It's important to not identify yourself too much with your work.
Oh my goodness,
or
thank you
allow
for saying
yourself to just be so attached to it,
to what you do,
that you feel like you have to keep doing it the same way
Preach.
that you've always done it, because
Things
especially when
change.
you're with Jesus, you're supposed to change. Like we're transforming from glory to
Yes.
glory,
Be a little butterfly.
So there is no.
Gotta sit in your chrysalis first.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta sit in the dark, in the quiet first, while you transform.
So yeah, just I'm glad that
butterfly. I didn't even do that on purpose. I'm
Nice.
sorry. Continue.
Good job. No, but I'm glad that I have changed and transformed, and that I'm not in that same space to just write the same way, not even just from a style perspective, but it's okay, and I'm glad that I don't like identify with that. Sometimes I kind of think like, where is that? Like, where did it go? But
Still there.
I have other ways of being creative now. So that is exciting to me to
Yeah.
explore those other ways and kind of evolve. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to say too, what did I wanted to say? I knew that there was something else before we kind of got to this next little chapter of our life here.
Poetry, vision, working together, being a team.
Oh, this is
Anything.
what it is, guys. Okay, so around the same time is as she was getting these visions for us working together and being creative together, traveling together, all these things, I was seeing hearts. I had hard eyes. I fell for you really quickly, and because I also love hard and I fall quickly, and if I like you, I like you, and it's just pretty clear, and I'm not, you know, not very good at hiding it. I tried to play it cool. There was just like some very subtle flirting.
For half a second, and then it was very obvious flirting.
Well, yeah, I was trying not to make it too obvious, but I was also trying to make it a little obvious because I was just like kind of like throwing the bait out there a little bit just to
Yeah.
see if you would like it or not. Because
Right.
that's
You don't want to go too intense too fast and
Right.
freak someone out like, ooh.
Yeah, and I wanted to see like if you liked me back. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
Before I was just like, I love you. You know? I would have said that
Yes,
right away. But,
you were very much. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can I
go
like say
ahead.
something on that? You were very much the pursuer. Like I wrapped a little something here and there, like just a little bit of flirting, a little bit of joking around, but you very much were intentional with how you spoke to me, communicating with me right away. Like he would literally like not be able to text me for maybe an hour or two because he'd be at his friend's house, the same friends he was talking about. And he would be like, oh, well, just so you know, I'm going to be at their house. And if I don't respond, that's why. But I'd love to call you when I get home if you're still awake. No worries, though. If not, we can talk tomorrow. I hope you have a good night. Like being so sweet and considerate. And I was just like, what? I was like, what is this? I just never experienced such healthy communication. Like I had guys like ask to take me on a date and like do this and that and whatever, slide in the DMs, tell me I'm cute, blah blah blah. But the difference was just like your level of intentionality and communication in your pursuit of me was crazy. Like I just felt like that was the difference between a boy and a man. And I just never I just never had experienced that. I mean, I was only 22 at the time, so you were 23. Like we were that's pretty young, I think, nowadays, which is sad, but like typically that's just like not the conversations I hear about from like fellow girlfriends or like guy friends too. It's just hard out there. I know it's hard out there. So
well, I mean,
it was really nice.
I was really just trying to like keep you on the hook as well. Obviously I was being respectful and whatnot, but really I was just like, please still be awake when I get home. Like I still really want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But I also
I would like stay awake.
Yeah.
I'd feel like I want to talk to him too. I want him to come home now. And then you would always come home sooner than I would expect because I was such a night owl and like the nightlife here was totally different. Like I was used to people getting home at like 2, 3 in the morning, but you would come home like 2 hours later and it would be like 11 p.m. or maybe 12.
Yeah, I mean it depended on the night. Probably.
And I would be like, "Oh, okay, I'm definitely awake. I'm over here like
well, you were an hour
like elbow deep
behind.
into a bag of chips and like watching some Netflix. Like I'm definitely awake and ready to talk to you."
Yeah, that hour time difference makes a difference too.
Oh
So
yes, there was a time difference
for me than it was for you.
Oh
so.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I was definitely up.
So yeah, but that was great. And then we would go on Tin Can, or we would talk. And yeah, I really really liked you, but didn't know yet if you really really liked me. But I was still like telling all my friends and like showing them pictures of you and stuff and being like, yeah, I'm talking to this girl, like just being super excited, super geeked, as you would say.
Geeked.
And that was a really fun time. And I don't know, it didn't take too long probably until I did confess my like for you,
Oh, I was so mad.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into that
Maybe
this time around, or maybe
this
save
is
it
a
for
good
part
spot.
2?
Yeah, maybe this is a good spot to stop and
Yeah, we'll get
pick it up.
into all of that in the next recording, because this is where it gets a little juicy. That was all the fluff, all the paint, all the nice watercolor painting before we just splatter paint on top of it. That was the painting of the picture, this scenery, the picture.
Yeah, so you guys tune into part 2 to see how I ruined everything.
No,
Yeah.
oh my goodness gracious, no.
No, I'm just kidding. How Rayanne ruined everything. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
No, yeah, this is fun, and I'm really glad that we're able to tell our story. I would just say, because this is something that the Lord has really been impressing upon me as I'm thinking back and reflecting on this story.
Yeah.
The kind of mindset that I was in, not really chasing after God at all, really. I mean, not wanting to go to church, still wanting to be stuck in the drugs and the alcohol. Even in that time in my life, God still wanted to bless me with a good thing. And first that was Tin Can, which was a community that I needed, and then through that was you, which was just a person that I needed to meet, obviously. You're the most important person in my life now, and God really blessed me with that even when I wasn't looking for a blessing from him. So if you're one of those people who is kind of ashamed of your lifestyle right now, I would say don't use that as an excuse to, just keep doing whatever you're doing, to just stay in that shame. But also be aware that God's love is so much more powerful than your running away. He still wants to bless you. He still will give you good
He's
things.
Still chasing you.
He is not.
He's pursuing you.
He is. He's absolutely pursuing you.
He is
right
pursuing
now.
you. He's
not
intentional.
He's not waiting for you to just get it all together and then he's gonna give you the blessing. Of course, there's work to do on our part.
Yeah.
We have a part to play.
Yeah.
But if it was just up to us to, fix our own selves, it would never happen.
I tried that. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So yeah,
the Lord will help you.
Be encouraged by that. And join us next time for episode 2 of ? We'll see. Please like and subscribe to Media Unlimited.
Wait, what? Of ?
Yeah, I don't know how many of the.
Oh, 2 out of blank episodes. I was like, we have a title for the series.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was what he was saying. I was like, what?
Yeah, no.
Okay, yes, ? amount of episodes, but
we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe by now if you're watching this in the future. And if you are, we appreciate you. Please like and subscribe to Media Unlimited. We're going to be dropping so much more content on here. Podcasts, video series, teachings, just general fun stuff.
General stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So thank you all so much. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Have a blessed day.